Hello friends, I welcome you all for this fourth session of a BSc Part 3 English Compulsory paper. In the last two sessions, we were discussing module number 1, Part A, that is interview skills. And in the last session, we have already started this PPT. We learned that how manners are important at the time of interview. We see that certain things we should use, like thank you, please, I beg your pardon, the expressions we should use when we were appearing for the interview. At the same time, we should avoid certain expressions that, well, I mean, these are in fact the fillers we generally use when we were speaking with our colleagues in our peer group. So this should not continue. We should not do that at the time of interview. We should be very particular with our expressions and all. Then in the last session, we also discussed certain uh, essential qualities of the candidate. We see, and we have already started to discuss this. In the last session, we discussed the mental alertness. We discussed that mental alertness is very important characteristic feature of candidate. He should be a very alert one. He should listen the question carefully and then only try to answer the question instead of very confidently or overconfidently, you may say, starting answering the question before even the panelist complete his question. So you should not do that. You should be very keen about the listening. You should listen the uh, question and then try to answer the question. So we also see one example of this question and answer. Then critical power of assimilation. This is also one of the very important characteristic feature of a good candidate, and this will be judged at the time of interview. They will judge what kind of critical power of assimilation you have. So and they will ask the question from that point of view. So the critical power of assimilation naturally brings out the traits of clear and logical exposition. You can clearly answer only if you know the demand of the question. So this is what a very important thing to note, that you should listen the question carefully. You should understand what exactly they want to from you, and then you try to answer it. And while answering the question, you should be a logical one. Many times, especially when we were completing our graduate course, you can see what we do. We generally try to answer, or generally we appear for the examination with the textbooks, and there is already an answer into the textbook. So we try to answer the questions with the help of the knowledge that we have gained in the textbook. So here there is no logic as such. We only know that because there it is an knowledge oriented, because it is a knowledge oriented kind of examination, knowledge oriented kind of learning, teaching we have done so far in BSc Part 3, or even in junior college, even in a schooling. We were a knowledge oriented. So what is exactly the critical power of assimilation? Critical power of assimilation means you should think logically about the given situation. You should think about the solutions, possible solutions to the problems that is given to you to solve. So this is what the critical power of assimilation. You should think clearly about the situation. You should think logically about the situation, and you should analyze different things regarding the situation. So this is what important thing to note. There would be a tendency to impress the board with your depth and grasp over issues. We generally do that. Avoid this unless avoid this unless the question specifically demands it. So don't go for they were not there to understand only one point of view, that whether you are you have a depth or knowledge in a particular issue, but they want to uh, judge your personality in a general manner. What kind of person you are? Can you tackle the issues that the institute or that the company is facing? This is their concern. So we should be a very pointed one. We should be a logical one. In a clear manner, in abridged manner, we should answer the questions. Then it is about a reflection of your true personality. So who you are, as I told you when we were started discussing of this interview skills, I told you that showing yourself honest is a very important thing. You should be honest at the time of interview. Don't boast about anything. Who you are, what you are, you show them. It does not mean that you should show your negative points. You should emphasize your positive points, but you should not exaggerate your positive points. What positive points, what strong points you have, show them, but do not boast about it. So you should be honest at the time of interview. See, while answering, it's important to be a straight to the point. You should be a straight to the point. Beating around the bush exhibits your superficial knowledge. You should be a pointed one. What exactly is asked to you, you should answer it exactly. You should not go merry round. You should not beat around the bush. You should beat the nail, and you should tell the answer of the question in abridged manner, in a logical manner, and in a clear manner. So it's better to politely say, or if you don't know the answer, if you should say, I don't know. It does not mean that you uh, get a failure in the interview. It shows your honesty. So you should say, I don't know. Then trying to cook up an answer in an attempt to impress the board. Many times it happens even in the examination that we semester examinations we appear for. We don't know the answer, but we write something because we have in our mind a prejudice that examiners never read the answers. They only see what is the size of the answer and they give you the marks. This is not the true thing. See, you should think, and many times it happens that you write 4 pages of answers and you get a 0 marks. So you should not do at least this into the interview panels, because these people are not fool one. They were there to judge your personality, and if they understand, or if they get that you are not a honest one, automatically you can see you will get a failure into the interview. So instead of a cooking answer, you should admit that I don't know the answer, or trying in vain answer every question assuming in questions carries certain weightage. So don't do that. Don't do all these things. Clear exposition or description of a certain thought or an idea requires a clear understanding of not only the demand of question, but also a character that is honest and simple. That is also very important. This is the character test. What kind of character you are, it should be exhibited at the time of interview. If you cook up the answers, if you start making them fool, then they automatically get that this person is not a honest one, is not at all honest, and he is not a good candidate for the said post. So we should avoid all these things, and we should be very honest one. And therefore I see this last point, only honesty can bring out clear and logical answer from you. And when you start boasting, when you start exaggerating, when you start cooking the things, you start there, your answer will be wrong one. So this is what is important. Then see, balance of judgment. This is also very important characteristic of a candidate. You should judge the given situation. See, once you start answering, it should be unbiased. and shouldn't be judgmental. Many times it happens with us. We have created certain opinions about certain things, and these panelists provoke you about certain things. Instead of asking you a question, they express their opinion that is exactly opposite to you, and then you start commenting with a judgmental uh, judgmental comments you pass on that particular thing. So this should not happen with us. We should not be a judgmental one. We should think unbiased. There should not be a bias, prejudice in our mind to approach, to think about the issue that is given to you to solve, or the problem that is given to you to solve. So this is a very important thing, that once you start answering, it should be unbiased and shouldn't be judgmental. And that shows your balance of judgment. Whether you are biased or whether you are a very balanced one is reflected in such a kind of question and answers. Then interview is an exam where your ability of analyzing the issues without bias will be checked, which not only requires the alertness of mind, but it also requires a lot of confidence. That is also a very important thing. It also requires a logical thinking. When a situation is given to you, when a problem is given to you, and you are supposed to give a judgment on that, instead of being a judgmental, instead of being a biased one, instead of being a prejudiced one, so about certain things, about or expressing your own opinions on it, what you should do, you should be a balanced one. You should critically about the issue that is given to you. You should think from different perspective to this issue, and then try to give your judgment, and that is called as a balance of judgment, unbiased kind of judgment. So lot of confidence is also required when you give an judgment. So this is also a such kind of questions also give also suggest whether you are confident or not. Then a lot of confidence comes from an understanding of the demand of the interview. So this is also very, you should understand what exactly the question is. And when you understand what exactly the question is, then only it is possible for you to give exact answer. So as I telling you again and again that you should be a very alert when you are facing, when you are approaching an interview. And when you are facing approaching interview with alertness, with mental alertness, you can see they cannot deceive you, and you can make a balanced judgment of on a given situation. So you should think, you should be very careful listener of the question. So a lot of confidence comes from a understanding of the demand of the interview. That is, it's not about your result. Understand that it is not about your result as an individual, sorry, result. It is about you. It is about your personality. They were there to, they were not only there to judge your subject knowledge, and it is not every time right that when you are not able to give an answer subject that is oriented towards subject knowledge, it means that you will get the failure in the interview. But if you fail to show good manners, if you fail to show mental alertness, if you are not, you are, if you are biased, if you are prejudiced, you can't give the balanced judgment, then automatically your claim as a candidate will be suspended. So this is what we should be clear in our mind, that this is not about the result of the interview, but it is about you, it is about your personality. Interviewers were there not to judge only your subject knowledge, but they were there to judge your personality. What kind of character you have, what kind of man or what kind of woman you are, is judged with their questions. And many times these questions were a tricky one. They provoke you and bring out what really you are. So this is what we should be very careful when we are approaching the interview. Portray yourself as an individual fit to be an employee with the potential and capacity. This is what I am telling you. You should be honest about everything, and you should portray yourself as a fit individual, as an employee with your potential and capacities. You should exhibit them that I have these potentials, I have these capacities that are required for this kind of job that you are supposed to offer me. So this is what is important, and all these things automatically reflect, gives them a glimpse of your balance of a judgment. See, good listeners. So balance of judgment, we get a balance of judgment with these points. See, one, good listener, as I told you, as I explored this point already, that you should listen carefully what exactly the question is, and not only there, so that is also very important. You should hear what other people actually mean. So that is very important thing for a balanced judgment. You should think about everything, you should think about others opinion. So if you are in the position of giving a judgment, it does not mean that you have an authority to uh, impose your judgment on the individuals. Instead of that, you should understand, you should listen others, try to understand the question, try to understand the problem, try to understand the alternative solutions, and then go for a judgment. So this is a good listener. A balanced judge should be a good listener first. You should listen to the other people, and then you should go for an judgment. Then a breadth of experience and relationship that also enable you to recognize the parallels and analogies. Experience is also very important for the, and what we get, you can see that I am completing a BSc part 3 this year, and how can you expect from us an experience? This is not the real experience we were talking about. You can read newspaper, you can read uh, uh, textbooks, you can read different books and get the experiences. So with that kind of experiences, or that kind of experiences will enable you to recognize the parallels and analogies in the situation. And when you recognize the parallels and analogies in the situation, you can understand the more appropriate, more valid solution to the problem. So this is also a breadth of experience and relationships is also very important. So you should develop the relationship among the organization, and when you develop the relation with in the organization, then automatically your relations, your sources will give you the appropriate solutions to the problems that were there. Then recognize their own emotions and biases, and that, and take them out of the equation. This is also very important. Many times when we were facing a problem, where when we were judging a certain things, our own emotions were involved in that. And as a good judge, we should be impartial one. And when we take a position of impartiality, we should avoid, or we should reject our own emotions. And instead of emotions, instead of biases, we should be a impartial one. We should listen others, we should avoid emotions from out of the equation, and we think it in a logical scientific light, and then we will get a very balanced judgment. Then adapt at expanding the array of choices under consideration. You should, and so you should not think in the manner that there is a one problem and there is a one solution. There is a one problem and there are multiple solutions. So you should think in that way. You should not think, and when you start thinking from only one solution, you can see you will consider only certain things in that particular problem. And when you start thinking about multiple solutions to a single problem, you can get a different perspective to a single problem. So this is very important thing to note, a very important thing to understand. So expanding the array of choices under consideration, that is very important thing to note. Then they remain grounded in the real world. So we should not assume things. We should be we should think in a real world. We should go with the facts. We should not go with the future things, or we should not go with the hypothesis. We should go with the facts. In making choice, they are considered its implementation. And while making the choice of a solution, you should think about its implementation. And when you think about the implementation of the solution, you can see that you can understand what exactly the problem you or the organization may face to implement a particular solution. So this is very important thing to note, very important thing to understand, that when we were choosing a solution, we should think about its implementation. So this is what the 2 points we learn in this session. In this session, we learn two basic points: that critical power of assimilation. In that we learn that we should be very clear and logical in our thinking, and with the clear understanding of the issue, clear understanding of the problem, we can understand it logically. We will think about the parallels, we should think about the analogies, and then try to understand the situation. So in that in that thought process, we should use a critical power of a assimilation. Then we learn the second point, that is a balance of a judgment. That is also a very important characteristic feature of a candidate: balance of a judgment. And this balance of a judgment shows that you are impartial, you are unbiased, you are not prejudiced about anything, you can judge the situation impartially, and you can make the judgment. So that is also making judgment. It does not mean that you are a judge and imposing your judgment on the other individuals or to the institute or group of people, but you are listening others and try to make out a real valid solution to the problem. Therefore the balance of judgment is very important one. We read all these points, we also understand that this for the good judgment, you should be a good listener, you should have a breadth of experiences, you should recognize your own emotions and biases, and you should avoid them when you are supposed to make a judgment. Then you should think about multiple solutions, not only one solution, one problem and one solution, but multiple solutions to a one problem. That will give you choice, and you should, while choosing it, you should consider the implementation of it, implementation procedure of it. And while implementation, you should be your judgment should be grounded in a real world with real facts. So this is what we learn in this session. In this session we learn two characteristic features of a good candidate. So we will stop here and continue the same in the next session. Thank you for listening.